Hey, what is up guys, Murderman4 here, and today marks the beginning of the end for Peter Capaldi and Stephen Moffat's era on Doctor Who with World Enough and Time. So World Enough and Time is the first part of the two-part finale for Series 10, and considering the pre-title sequence, it's going to be pretty strongly connected to the Christmas special as well, which is going to be Peter Capaldi's regeneration episode. But before I get into an actual review of the episode itself, I'm just going to talk a bit about spoilers first, because there were two major shock reveals in this episode, and both of those were spoiled by none other than the BBC itself. Those two things were the Mondasian Cybermen and the return of John Simm's Master. Now, I understand the reveal of the Mondasian Cybermen because they were filming outside and fans could come and see the filming, so that would have got leaked easily. But John Simm's Master, there was no filming with him that would have been caught by fans. The only reason it got leaked, and it did get leaked, was because the BBC decided that they would put a brief clip of John Simm's Master in a trailer for the series. And so this trailer aired after the pilot, and initially they were going to put a spoiler warning before that portion of the trailer so that anyone who didn't want to know the spoiler could close their eyes or look away and not see that John Simm was coming back. Which, if you ask me, is really stupid, because if you have to put a spoiler warning on it, don't put it in the trailer. But anyways, The Sun leaked this early because they saw it at a press screening of the pilot, and they decided to go ahead and announce it anyways, and so the BBC made an official announcement about it so that the news could be heard from them by most people instead of by The Sun. And so that was really annoying, because if they hadn't decided to put it in the trailer, then this could have been one of the greatest shock reveals of all of Doctor Who, and I mean that 100%. It could have been absolutely incredible. Fortunately, there were plenty of other surprises in the episode as well, but unfortunately, in my case, I found out about most of those before I saw the episode. I was super hyped for this episode. It was the most hyped I've been for an episode since before Series 9. And so at the beginning of the season, this wasn't one of my most anticipated episodes, although I was still very excited for it thanks to the two returns. But after the Next Time trailer and the TV trailer, I could not wait. And I just read everything that I could, spoiler-free reviews, fan theories. I did not specifically go searching for spoilers. I would not want that to happen, but unfortunately, because of the amount of spoiler-free reviews that I read, the teasers, and then the fan theories, all of them kind of added up to pretty much tell me what happened in the episode. And so there's only one shock that wasn't spoiled for me, and I'm going to get into that soon. But of course, the episode starts off with Peter Capaldi's regeneration. I think that this scene was a little bit strange. Yes, it was definitely an intriguing hook, but in and of itself, this scene has nothing to do with World Enough and Time. Now, of course, it could play heavily into the Doctor Falls, and I assume it's a clip from the Christmas special, because that's when Peter Capaldi's actually supposed to regenerate. And of course, it's snowing, and that's a sure sign of a Christmas special. Definitely reinforcing the fact as well that the finale and the Christmas special are going to be heavily linked. But as it stands, in this individual episode, it doesn't fit at all, and so it's just a little bit jarring for me. So it'll be better when, watching back this story as a whole, hopefully. I mean, I don't know if it'll strongly connect to the Doctor Falls, but hopefully it will, so that it's not just a stupid, pointless foreshadowing to the Christmas special. But as it stands, it doesn't have much of a connection, and so as exciting as it was also a little bit jarring. And at the same time as well, Peter Capaldi is shouting "No!" just going into the titles, and I hate that. Please, don't let those be his final words before he regenerates. That would be terrible. It brought to mind Darth Vader in Revenge of the Sith when he's shouting out "No," and that's not a good comparison you want to be making. But anyways, to be honest, that scene is probably my biggest complaint about the episode. So when that's the case, you've made a good episode. I'll also say as well that this is the first new series story with the Cybermen that I feel like the Cybermen have actually been done 100% properly, and this is definitely the creepiest they've been since the 1960s. I don't think it quite gets up there with some of the 60s stories, but it's definitely the creepiest that the Cybermen have been in a very, very long time. So props to you, Stephen Moffat. Good job. But the episode begins with this great CGI shot of this massive spaceship in front of the black hole, and the special effects on this are absolutely incredible. Honestly, that's got to be one of the best effects shots I've ever seen in the show. It seriously would not seem out of place in a big budget movie. Like, that was fantastic CGI, and very quickly introduces us to the scale of that ship. The small size of the front control room compared to the rest of the ship was just incredible, and the black hole looks so menacing there. So great job to the VFX team for that. But very quickly we get right into the main story with Missy pretending to be the Doctor. So the TARDIS lands, Missy, Bill and Nardole exit the TARDIS, and Missy's kind of having a bit of fun with her role as the Doctor. She's calling herself Doctor Who, which of course is an in-joke to the title of the show and the fact that some fans argue whether or not Doctor Who is a proper term for the Doctor, especially considering he was credited that from the 60s up until the early 80s. And I did think it was pretty funny the first couple of times, but after a while the jokes started to get a little bit tired, and by the end of it I'm like, please, just stop. You're saying Doctor Who. Like, I think they said it at least 10 times, maybe 15, in the span of about 5 minutes. So that's a little bit on the ridiculous side, Moffat. I think we get the point. But it was still a very enjoyable scene, and to be able to see Missy playing the role of the Doctor, not completely seriously, but she's definitely doing an adequate job coming up with all these deductions and stuff. It's really neat to see, and of course we learn later that this is because the Doctor is putting Missy on a test to see if she can really be good. Anyways, their presence is detected, and we have this blue guy come in with his gun up, and he notices that the elevators from the bottom floor are coming up to the top floor, which freaks him out drastically. And so he starts demanding which one of them are human, because they only come up when there's humans. But he starts demanding, pointing the gun to them. The Doctor, of course, comes out of the TARDIS. He's been observing to see how Missy does, and he comes out to interfere. And this is the moment that did shock me. I didn't expect this. I didn't read a spoiler about this, which I'm very happy about, because the Doctor is giving one of his speeches to try to convince this guy not to do what he's doing, to try to save the day, as always, try to save Bill. And we've seen the Doctor do this kind of thing before when the companion's in danger, so this is just business as usual. He's giving this really rousing speech, and he's almost reaching the conclusion of the speech. You can see the guy's thinking about it, he's considering it, and then, in a moment, he shoots Bill. And that was just shocking. And just to make sure we know that Bill is actually fully dead, we get a nice pan down, and we see this massive gaping hole in Bill's chest. And man, was that a surprise moment. Just the suddenness of it. There was no build up to it. We knew that of course the guy was threatening her life, but the Doctor's always been able to talk people out of this stuff before. So to have that happen in the middle of him trying to convince the guy to put down the gun, that was just so fantastic. And then we get to a flashback of the build-up towards this, where the Doctor's trying to convince Bill and Nardole to help him take Missy out on a test run, and that way we get a bit of a backstory, and I'm really glad that they did it this way instead of putting that information first, because it's really a lot more effective when we see the build-up towards her death after her death, especially when we get to the scene where Bill asks the Doctor to promise her to not get her killed. And the Doctor says, kind of jokingly, well, I can't promise you that. I mean, he's kind of serious because he knows the dangers of traveling with him, but at the same time, he knows that he can do stuff to save his companions, and so obviously he's not expecting Bill to die. So it's kind of done in a joking manner, and then it contrasts that with a cut back to the ship as Bill falls down onto the floor dead. That just makes it so chilling and effective, just the realization of what has happened and the contradiction between, the Doctor's jokingness and then suddenly what's actually happened. And then we have these creatures that are arriving on the bridge. I think while I was seeing filming pictures, people were calling them top knots. I don't know if that's exactly what they're called, but that's the name I'm going to use throughout this review. And these things are creepy. Obviously, these are the preliminary version of the Cybermen. Of course, if we didn't have the reveal, I probably wouldn't have guessed that until much later down the line. But right away, because we know the Cybermen are coming, we know that these are the precursor to them. And these things are really creepy. Just their monotone voice, just like some of the other iterations of Cybermen. But the cloth over their faces, the tubes coming out of the nose, that is really effective. And so they take Bill away, they say to repair her, and they say that they will not return her. And so the doctor makes a quick deduction that if they can repair her, she must still be alive in some capacity, and leaves a subconscious message for her to wait for him. Of course, at this point, the characters don't know that this ship, which is 400 miles long, I didn't mention that, that's a massive length, because of a black hole, there's a difference in how fast time goes on each end of the ship. And this is a really neat concept, and what's awesome is that this is actually grounded in real science. This is legitimate science here at work, and it's incredible the change in pace that the time's going at, because later on we see a clock of floor 0 compared to floor, I think it's 1056 that they're on the bottom floor, and the time differential, you can calculate it out. 1 second on the top floor is equal to 1.7 days on the bottom floor. And so even though 2 days have passed for the bridge, 1,000 years has passed at the bottom end of the ship. And so the crew that was sent down there has obviously lived on through their descendants. They've grown and multiplied and have just spread out across the bottom of the ship in, according to the bridge, just a couple of days. But for them, across centuries and centuries. And so we get this development to help keep those people down there surviving, because of course everything is breaking down after 1,000 years. But the significant part of this is that the longer the doctor takes to get down there, the longer Bill is going to be stuck down there waiting for him. And that of course plays a pivotal role in the episode. In any case, Bill wakes up in this really creepy looking decrepit hospital, and I love the atmosphere of this episode, especially in this hospital. It gives this really creepy vibe. You know that something terrible is going on here. And Bill sees a quick hallucination of the doctor saying, "Wait for me." We also briefly see this character called Mr. Razor, who of course we get properly introduced to in a few minutes. But Bill gets up out of her bed and starts exploring because she hears this voice saying, "Pain, pain, pain," over and over and over again. And so she's drawn to that voice. She exits the little area where she is in, and she sees the store that leads to a place that's labeled Conversion Theater, which of course is our first proper hint that these are Cybermen. We hear whirring blades in the background, which is really kind of creepy. It's a simple sound effect, but terrifying when you think about the possibilities that that sound effect can imply. And we see a door labeled in and a door labeled out. So she peeks in the door labeled in, a bunch of people lying in beds, not too weird, but then she goes into the out, and we see all these top knots sitting there, heads covered in the bags, the tubes coming out of their noses, and at the very end, one of them keeps tapping at their little speaker keyboard thing. And what's so creepy about this is obviously they've done something with the voice box so they can't speak, and so this robotic voice is the only way they can communicate. And it's terrifying to think that they're feeling pain, but they can't, properly communicate that through screaming or something like a regular person would. But anyways, Bill hears voices outside, so she goes and hides behind a curtain. In walks a nurse and Mr. Razor, and the nurse does something to this top knot, which supposedly fixes the problem. But after she leaves, Bill goes out and discovers all she did was turn down the volume slider, which is just chilling and cold and heartless. And you realize then that all of those top knots in there could be in agonizing pain, but the volume is just turned down because they simply don't want to hear about the pain. Man, is that dark. That is so dark, especially for a family show like Doctor Who, and I love that they're doing that. I love the dark stuff. This kind of stuff is what I want to see from a Cyberman story. It's supposed to be dark, it's supposed to be grim, it's supposed to be chilling and terrifying, and this is what this is. It's so well done. Anyways, Mr. Razor appears and decides to explain to Bill what's going on and befriend Bill. And as time is slowly going on up in the bridge, a long time passes for Bill, a long time for her to be able to become good friends with Mr. Razor. She helps out of the hospital doing mopping and stuff like that. And we slowly get to see the evolution of these Cybermen as more parts are added to them. Later we see, in what is one of the most chilling scenes in my opinion, a bunch of them walking out of the conversion theater. They've now got these chest units attached to them, and they now got little tiny eye holes, and so it's great to be able to see over time the slow process of building towards what we eventually know as Cybermen. Of course, Bill, who's been here by this point, I think a couple of years, which is ridiculous, but she asked the logical question, when does the cloths come off their faces? And Mr. Razor replies with, they don't. Conversion is permanent. And it's just a simple line like that is just so ominous, and the implications of that are so creepy. And we get to see them again, and the one top knot opens up its arms and says, and there's this close-up on its face as it says it, and I don't know why, but that shot just, that gets me so freaked out. Just the way that they stumble along, like they're not entirely in control of themselves, and just the inhuman look of their faces now, and the music. Now's a good time to mention the music. Some of the music tracks in this episode I wasn't a huge fan of, but right here in this scene, that is some beautifully haunting music. Absolutely haunting. And there are a couple of tracks later on as well that just set the mood so well and just add to the terror that is the Cybermen. Anyways, now's a good time to talk about Mr. Razor. I really liked his character throughout this. I thought he was nice and quirky, pretty funny, but also he seemed to be, a pretty decent guy. He was helping Bill out. Unfortunately, this whole time I did know the twist that he was the master, because that was one of the other things that was spoiled for me. I didn't think it was going to end up being true at first because we didn't see a Mr. Razor in any of the trailers or promotional pictures or anything, so I was hoping that it wasn't true so that wasn't spoiled for me, but unfortunately it was. But I can say with confidence, John Sim did an amazing job with his performance. If I wasn't looking for John Sim, I wouldn't have known that this was him. If I didn't know that Mr. Razor was going to be the master, I wouldn't have guessed it until the scene where he's interacting with Missy. And if I didn't know John Sim was in this episode, as I said earlier, that would have been one of the biggest, most amazing shocks ever, because I never would have guessed that was John Sim's master. I would not have ever thought to guess that. So, that just makes me all the more angry that the BBC spoiled that. But yeah, John Sim does an amazing job as Mr. Razor and turns him into an actually pretty likable character throughout the episode until eventually he brings Bill in to be converted. But before that happens, he takes her outside like she's always wanted, and that allows us, the viewer, as well to see the true state of this area. Everyone's sick, everyone's dying, and it really kind of starts to express that need to evolve, to keep being altered by these mechanical components to allow everyone to live longer and keep going with their lives. Of course, Bill can't leave the hospital for very long without her chest unit malfunctioning, so then they return to the hospital, and of course more time passes. We don't know how long it's been by this point. Presumably, I would say somewhere between 3 and 5 years that Bill's been down there, which is ridiculous because up top it's only been about 10 minutes to 3 years, which is, oh man, that's heartbreaking. But they finally got the blue guy distracted, and now they're going to come down in the elevator to find Bill. To which, of course, Bill gets super excited and asks Mr. Razor how long the elevator will take to get there. Razor gives her a bit of a death glare, and she says, "Why can't you tell me?" And his response is, "Because if you ask again, I just might tell you," signifying just how strong of a bond they've grown over the past few years. And Bill, of course, takes advantage of this and asks him, of course, to tell her. And so, at night, they decide to sneak to the elevator so that Bill can escape. Or so Bill thinks. Turns out Mr. Razor takes her to the conversion theater, saying that the elevators are somewhere near there, and it's revealed that it was just a ruse so that Bill can be converted. Here we see our last iteration of the top knots. They've now got proper mouths and these big eyes, and one of them has one of the cyber helmets on its head just without the handlebars, and these are even more creepy than before. Those big gaping black eyes and the ever screaming mouths without the sound are, oh my word, it's just ghostly and chilling, and I cannot stop complimenting the atmosphere of this episode. It's nightmarish. Absolutely nightmarish. And Bill recognizes that these patients They're in agony their entire lives. Every single second they're screaming. And the surgeon says, oh, well, we've got something for that now. And he lifts up the classic Cybermen handlebar things that go on the heads and says, this won't stop you feeling pain, but it will stop you caring about it. Which is, once again, chilling. Because we know the Cybermen don't have emotions. They don't care about that sort of thing. But the fact that they will still be in ultimate agony for the rest of their lives is horrifying. Now this does kind of contradict with the 10th planet, where one of the Cybermen specifically says that they don't feel pain, but that can be excused because this seems to be a separate origin from the 10th planet Cybermen, so I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, so then we cut back to the Doctor, Missy, and Nardole arriving at the bottom of the ship, and we have seen companions in peril like this before, so we're not super concerned. The Doctor's obviously going to save her, right? Unfortunately, no. Not this time. At least, I hope not, because if Stephen Moffat reverses what he did, I will be so mad at him. But yeah, so this was once again another twist that was unfortunately spoiled for me, although this one I wasn't super surprised about. I feel like even if it hadn't been spoiled for me, it wouldn't have been a huge shock for me. But yeah, the Doctor and Nardole go to find where Bill is, while Missy is left behind to try to figure out the origins of the ship. And so here we have a bit of a double reveal. We have the reveal with the Master, and the reveal with Bill as a Cyberman. And so I'm going to talk about the Master reveal first. As I said, I would not have guessed that Mr. Bill. As I said, I would not have guessed that Mr. Razor was the Master. So this would have been an incredible shock reveal. As it stands, a lot of people have been questioning why Missy doesn't remember being there. But that's because it's previously established in multi-Doctor stories that when the same Time Lord is in the same place experiencing the same thing at different points in their timeline, only the most recent incarnation can remember it, and that's only as the event is happening. Just that maintains the time streams, and so that's why Missy doesn't remember being here as John Sims' Master. But something I also really like about this is that the Master has been in disguise this whole time. It's a little bit hokey how he pulls off the mask and reveals himself, but I love that to pieces because that's exactly what the classic series Master had done so many times before. It's a classic Master move, and we hadn't seen that before in the new series, so I'm so happy that we got to see it. As hokey as it was fantastic. We have the reveal of the Bill Cyberman, which, honestly, this shot here, unfortunately, I don't know how well you can see it. It showed up a lot better when I was watching it on TV than on my laptop, but this shot right here is one of the most chilling, creepy shots I've ever seen in Doctor Who. It was just such a fantastic reveal of this Cyberman, and, oh, so creepy. I loved it so much. And, of course, the Doctor asks the Cybermen to try to search for Bill, and the Cyberman reveals that it is Bill. And so this is, of course, incredibly sad, but it's something that we've never seen happen before. We did see Danny Pink converted to a Cyberman in Death in Heaven, but he wasn't the proper companion, and this is a little bit different. I think this process is a lot more horrific, and especially with all the betrayal that Bill went through and the time that she spent there witnessing the experimentation of the top knots and such. But this is just such a horrendous fate. She's not dead, she's converted, and that's just such a terrible fate to put on a companion. And then Missy appears, and then the Master appears, and the look on the Doctor's face when we first hear John Sims' voice in that room, that is chilling. At this point, when I was watching it, even though I knew these reveals were coming, by this point my heart was pounding, my legs were shaking, I was on the edge of my seat. This was such a fantastic ending. I did not want it to end. And then Bill says that one line.
I waited for you.
And in that one line, all the emotions just come flooding in as you realize Bill has spent all that time hoping and dreaming and waiting and trusting in the Doctor, and he's arrived just a bit too late. And that's it. 10 minutes for him, years for her, and the conversion into the Cyberman is the cost. And of course this is the Master's doing too, so I can't imagine how mad the Doctor is going to be when he finds out the Master did this. But what a fantastic cliffhanger. Even though I knew a lot of the twists, it still worked incredibly well, and I'm just so so happy that the Cybermen are finally back to being horrific and terrifying and absolutely hauntingly, chillingly anti-human. A humanoid perverted by all the anti-human machinery until they're not human. It's just so fantastic, and we haven't had that properly in way too long. And the other thing I want to mention too is the voice of the original Cybermen is back, which I'm really happy about, because the classic sing-song voice of the original Cybermen, which is only for that version of the Cybermen, is one of my favorites. At first, when I first heard it when I was a kid, I thought it was ridiculous, but I love it now. And yes, in the 10th Planet a couple times it could be pretty ridiculous and not taken seriously at all. But here it's done to great effect, and it accentuates the creepiness of the Mondasian Cybermen very well. One other thing I do want to point out is this doesn't contradict previous stories, which is good. Now, what I mean by that is, of course, it's not going to contradict previous Doctor Who stories, although that has happened in the past before, hellbent. But there's this Big Finish story called Spare Parts, which actually details the origins of the Cybermen on Mondas. And what I was really worried about going into this episode was that it would retcon Spare Parts, because, of course, because it's not part of the TV show, some people might not consider it canon. I personally consider the Big Finish audios as canon, as do a lot of other people, but of course the TV show takes prominence over that, so I was worried it would be overwritten, but thankfully it's not. And from the trailers of the Doctor Falls, it appears that this branch of Cybermen, even though they come from the same source, the Mondasians, and so technically do still count as the original Cybermen, this does seem like a different branch from the ones that we see in other Doctor Who episodes, and so that, I think, is a good thing, because it allows an origin story for the Cybermen, and we have the original Cybermen back without causing any sort of continuity issues, and while still maintaining something that makes a lot of sense, because these are Mondasians, the original source of the Cybermen, just they're evolving in a different place and in a different time under similar circumstances. And so I thought that was really neat to be able to do. Hopefully the Doctor Falls keeps up with this and continues to not contradict Spare Parts. And yeah, so I think that's really cool. But speaking of the Doctor Falls, I do have some concerns. One, thanks to Hellbent, I am now completely terrified that Bill will be revived and go back to normal. When Clara died in Face the Raven, the first thing I thought was, good, Stephen Moffat can't bring her back and screw up her beautiful, fantastically done exit. 2 episodes later, I was very wrong. Please, Moffat, don't screw up this fantastically horrible exit. That sounds like an oxymoron. Fantastically chilling exit. This is such a terrible way to go, and it makes it all the more effective for it. And if you somehow undo Bill's cyber conversion, that will remove all emotional impact from this episode, and I will not forgive you. I will not forgive you. Hellbent, one of the reasons I hate Hellbent, I love Heaven Sent, but I hate Hellbent, is because of Clara's resurrection. And it's because Stephen Moffat can't keep characters dead. Every time he kills off a character, he brings them back to life again, and it's stupid. There's no consequences. Please, Moffat, let us have consequences for once. Please, I'm begging you. My other major concern is we see the 2 most recent models of Cybermen in the Next Time trailer, which is really strange. Why couldn't we just focus on the Mondasian Cybermen, give them all the attention? It makes me worried for a couple of reasons. Mainly that either A, they're going to take most of the attention from the Mondasian ones in the Doctor Falls, or vice versa, the Mondasian ones will take most of the attention from them. Either way, making one of those variations pointless to have in the episode. Obviously, I'm very pleased the Mondasian Cybermen are back, so even if the next 2 do take precedence, I won't be upset that they're back. I'll just be upset that they're including the other ones, because what's the point of including the original Mondasian ones if you're just going to focus on the newer models next episode? Or vice versa, what's the point of including the newer models if you're just going to focus on the Mondasian Cybermen most of the time? One of the theories that I think is going to happen as well is that it's an evolution of the Cybermen because of the time differential in the ship. But if that's the case, will we get to see Tomb of the Cybermen and Earthshock style Cybermen as well? I hope so, because if we skip from Mondasian to Cybus variations, that would be so stupid. but that's definitely a possibility. And that would also further reinforce the fact that this is a separate branch of Cybermen, and they might all end up being destroyed on this ship before they can even leave it or move the ship somewhere else. So we'll have to wait and see. But I am disappointed that the other versions of Cybermen are back, because they're not nearly as scary or creepy or effective as these previous ones, and I'm worried that the Mondasian ones, the attention is going to be taken away from them for the newer ones, which could ruin the best appearance of the Cybermen we've had in decades. But anyways, that's about it for World Enough in Time. I thought it was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Best of the season. It's all up to the Dr. Falls about how the story does overall, but this episode in and of itself is excellently done. It's one of the scariest episodes of Doctor Who I've ever seen. It's also one of the most heart-pounding and exciting, exhilarating, shocking, you name it. This is a fantastic episode from start to finish, and I just hope the Doctor Falls doesn't fall flat on its face and let this part down. But yeah, so I'm going to give World Enough in Time a 9 out of 10, which brings my series average to 7.73 out of 10. And if the Dr. Falls can keep up this level of amazingness, then this could very well be one of the best finales we've ever had. But yeah, so those are my thoughts and opinions on World Enough in Time. Please tell me what you guys thought in the comments below. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Was it a worthy return for the Cybermen? Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in my next review for the Series 10 finale, The Doctor Falls. Mercury Man 4, over and out. I'll see you guys later.